You're listening to Rebel Spirituality with me, Sam Goldfinch. Here's the truth. Wisdom doesn't follow rules. So each week we're going to explore what it means to wake up your way so you can live a more peaceful, creative and inspired life no matter your circumstances. It's time to blaze your unique path to truth. Hey, my rebel friends. Okay, so I'm reflecting on my ADHD diagnosis this week, and I think it's important I put this one out there. I'd recommend that you tune in whether you've been diagnosed with a, air quotes, disorder or not, because it speaks to the truth of who we all are before and beyond our psychology. And I don't know how many people are sharing what I'm sharing on the podcast today, so I'd love to hear what you think. And other than that, the Mystery School starts this coming Sunday, the 23rd of February, and I'd love to see you in there. I'll put a link in the show notes with all of the information. And a couple of people have reached out to me over the last week or two asking, am I in the right place for this? Am I sort of spiritually advanced enough? And the school is much more about common sense and much less about lighting incense. And, it's not that any spiritual practices are banned or any of that kind of thing. But what we're doing in the school is getting back to what spirituality is pointing to before and beyond all the usual forms and practices we normally relate to it, and just stripping it back to its essence, to its real, what it really points to for me. And pointing towards how you work so that it takes stuff off your mind. So please don't feel like, oh my God, I couldn't go in there. I just don't know enough or anything like that. There's no such thing as that. Whether you consider yourself to be an advanced yogi or whether you consider yourself to be someone who's just new to the spiritual path, whatever that means, then you'd be very welcome in the school, and I'd love to see you in there. So send me a message if you have any questions or anything like that. But it's going to be quite the adventure, quite the ride. 5 months or so of just exploring some really cool things together, some understandings that will, as I say, really simplify life so that you can get out of that seeking mode, relax, just take life less seriously. Just take a breath. Just take a breath and enjoy just being more. Okay, without further ado, I will hand you over to me on the podcast. See you there. Hey, Rebel friends. Okay, right, I'm really excited about this one. I've been waiting to record this podcast for a long time, and then over the course of the last few weeks, I've found myself talking about ADHD and the current, which I think is very positive, this opening up of the discussion around neurodiversity, neurospiciness, as I quite like that. I've heard people call it. And, and I think there's a lot more kind of awareness coming to this. There's a lot more books coming out around ADHD and the autistic spectrum and all sorts of different, in air quotes, disorders or kind of, however we might personally choose to speak or language or relate to these things. And as many of you will know, I was diagnosed with ADHD a few years ago. I mean, I'd kind of known it for a very long time, but I went through the kind of official channels as such. And I have a few reflections which kind of get straight to the heart of, of what we're up to here, what we're talking about at Rebel Spirituality, and because I think it's wonderful. I think it's incredible that there's a lot of awareness coming out. And I think there are some traps and some dangers as well to over-identifying with any, as I say, disorder or anything like that, which we potentially may be challenged by. And so I just wanted to talk about that because I think it's an important one. And I don't know how many people are sharing what I'm just about to share. So, I feel called to put it out there. So, as I say, to start this off, I am 100% in favour of discussions and awareness and these books coming out and people becoming more and more aware of. I'll talk about ADHD because that is a personal, experience of mine and something that I can, speak directly to. But I would imagine that, this applies to many other things too, So. But I think it's fantastic that we're having these discussions, and in many of the podcasts that I've had, I have spoken to guests around this topic and this kind of thing. And I think it's really great that we're having more of those discussions. And so this is more of an additional thing, as well as that current movement and that current shift in understanding around this. But the thing that I want to caution people against is effectively over-identifying with anything that is neurological, physiological, biological. Because we're so much more than our bodies. Of course, we're appearing with this body and this brain, but ultimately, everything we're exploring here on Rebel Spirituality talks to who we are before and beyond even those metaphors. They don't really do it justice, but who you really are, your true identity, who you are before and beyond any neurological condition you may have, or physiological or biological or psychological, anything that's playing out in the world of form, who you are before that. And just as a way of sort of an example, it's like you take ADHD, right? Now, no one ever experiences ADHD all at once, right? So that's like a concept, like a multitude of factors and things that someone might experience. It's like a thought form, it's like the word money, like it's like an image or a metaphor that contains within it lots of different meanings, right? All any of us ever experience is what's occurring in this moment. And so perhaps it's possible that for someone who's neurodiverse, one way or another, they experience this moment slightly differently, or perhaps they have like a different way of, their neurology is working in a slightly different way, their working memory is working in a slightly different way, or something like that. But that is, that's not, ADHD is a label that we've stuck on a bunch of things that can happen to people, and ultimately in this moment, we're just experiencing what we're experiencing. And the thing that's going to be, thought, the power of thought, our relationship to what's happening, what's showing up in the world of form is always going to be a far more powerful determiner than what's actually occurring. So I often use this as an example, but kind of a bit of a running joke with me and my partner Robin is how long it can take me to make a cup of tea. So if I don't kind of stand there and make the tea, boil the water, do it all in one go, I'll end up forgetting the tea. The tea will end up in the microwave needing to be warmed up, and then I'll forget that the tea's in the microwave, and Rob will get back from work and why is there a cup of tea in the microwave, that kind of thing. And I've spoken to a lot of people for whom those kind of things that can happen can be used as something for self-recrimination. We can beat ourselves. What's wrong with me? I can't even make a cup of tea, or whatever the language might be. But I just tend to have a sense of humor about these things, like it's okay. Like my brain works in a certain way, and that is how it is. But the story that I have around it, or the identification, or the idea that I have that it means something about who I am, that can become very heavy. That can be, particularly if it's something that we relate to as, if there's something, wrong with us or something like that, that can be quite a heavy thing to carry. And so that's up for grabs, Even if there are certain ways that we function, certain things about our bodies that work in a certain way, our relationship to these things it's not fixed. And that's where the real powerful shifts can come from. Because as I say, all we're ever really experiencing is this moment. And in this moment, if we're identified with a concept, if we're caught up in this idea, it's almost like saying, I am ADHD. Of course, we usually say, I have ADHD, so there is... It doesn't look like the totality of us. But with many of these things, we relate to them as if they are us. So we, I am statements. We say things like, I am an introvert. I am fill in the gaps, whatever it happens to be. Now, of course, some of this is just linguistics. It's just language at the end of the day. So, it's, of course, it's fine. We say I am however many hundreds of things in a day. I'm hungry. But in any of those moments where we fall for that trick, and we take the truth of awareness, of pure being, I am, and it becomes that thing it's looking at, be that ADHD, be that introversion, be that extroversion, be that anything, then it starts to become constrictive. It starts to feel like this thing that we're fully identified with. And what I've seen is, if we go looking for examples of things in our life, we'll see it everywhere. So when I first got my ADHD diagnosis, and I became quite kind of identified with that, and it's okay, like it's fine. It's just the way it went. I started seeing things everywhere, and then I started getting caught up in my thinking about it more, and it started to feel like a bit like something that meant a whole bunch of things about me, and there were certain things that weren't possible, and all this kind of stuff. And I've come to see that as I've just relaxed that, so much of that stuff was just generated by the power of thought. It wasn't true. It wasn't ultimately true. And what I've started to notice is just how many of those things have started to fall away a lot more. Not all the time. Sometimes I have like a very ADHD day, in air quotes. But a lot of the time I find myself not in that space. And I think so much of that is because I'm just coming to know the truth of my being. which is the truth of your being. It's the same for all of us, which is always before and beyond anything that's in the world of form. And of course, we are this expression of ourselves in the world of form. Everything's connected. There is no separation ultimately. But those parts, those elements of us, the ebb and flow of experience is changing in every moment. But yet there's this unchanging element of us that is there bearing witness to all of this. And that's really worth knowing. And to me, that's where the true freedom lies. And so, yes, let's do everything we can to read the books, to give ourselves the skills and the practical tips and tricks in order to live the best life we can for ourselves. And that may be, whatever it might be, as we've been talking about ADHD today, it could be, having timers, having things that, all those kinds of things, the practical things that we might do, having lists. Like if I didn't have like an hour by hour, what you're up to today, my life would be a nightmare, all that's amazing. But let's not stop there. Let's experience, not even experience, let's know. Let's come to know more and more who we are before and beyond any of that, because that's the place where freedom lies. And if anybody resonates with this and wants to talk about it, feel free, just reach out and let me know, because I know what it can be like to be over-identified with an idea or a disorder or whatever it might be, and it feels like the totality of us, which of course it never is. So, I think that's it. I think I've covered all the things I wanted to cover. I hope you have a really beautiful day. If this is one that you'd like to share with somebody who perhaps does struggle with ADHD, then feel free to do so, or whatever it might be. Or even if they thrive with it, these are the, perhaps, someone who's absolutely thriving with it. That's how I feel. I feel like I'm thriving. And, sometimes my brain does some things that I can laugh at, but it doesn't mean anything about who I really am. It never has, and it never will. And it will never mean anything about you either. All right, team. I hope you have a beautiful week. I'll see you soon.